Okay, you might have to hold yours because we've got a lapel and it works, but there's no little clip. I'm going to get that.
See if we can we...
Marco, everything you say will be recorded on YouTube.
We can take the clip off the other one.
Yeah. Oh, that's what easy it was.
So with that, just as Marco's going to come up, I'll introduce to you Marco, and we've got Amanda here. So Marco's from GitHub, Amanda from Microsoft. I'll let them introduce themselves, but they're going to go through, do some demos and some tips and tricks around Copilot. But then the key part of the night, and I think why everybody's here, is it's time to give them a good grilling. So start thinking about your questions. If you're online, joining us online, pop your questions in the chat as well. And so we can get those asked to Marco and Amanda. But Marco, come on up and introduce yourself.
Hi everyone, I'm Marco. I'm based out of Melbourne, like Amanda. A senior solution engineer in GitHub. Not much to say, everything is recorded. So, Mom, I love you. The rest is all good. As you can tell from my accent, I'm Italian, moved in Australia some time ago. And yeah, I mean, that's it. Really, as Jerome was saying, we love this kind of events because it's an open forum. So normally we present, the intention is not to sell anything or to tell you. We want to discuss technical topics, but if you have anything that you're interested, any kind of question, I mean, please feel free to stop and ask. For the rest, I leave it to my colleague.
So good to meet you all, and thanks for the amazing turnout, especially on a weekday night. I am Amanda. I'm technically employed by Microsoft, but spend most of my time on the GitHub product suite. I'm part of our global Black Belt organization, so a bit of a middle ground, kind of representing our Australia, New Zealand customers with our product and engineering teams. Yeah, based in Melbourne. So the last few days of weather has been very much like home for me. So we're going to spend just a quick run through of, I guess, our Copilot experience and IDE, as well as some of the new announcements that have come out across the last 2 weeks. I'm a big believer in Copilot not just being used to accelerate our developer experience and how we quickly code, but also using Copilot as a learning tool to make development and engineering more accessible for us, as well as how we use it as a bit of a bridge between my developer experience and business outcomes. So I know as like career progression, a lot of our devs talk about, hey, how do we actually move into tech lead roles, for example? So using GitHub Copilot as a bit of a middle ground and learning and enablement tool to help you achieve some of the roles and capability aspects there. So I'll be super quick, hopefully, and then we can get into the hard questions. But before I hop into the demo, how many of you are already using Copilot today? Sweet. Quite a lot, quite a lot. So hopefully we can give you some creative use cases that you're not implementing in your workflow. Anything that I show you are all just suggestions. I encourage you to kind of see how you can break the product. So much of this is a personal experience, and it's about how do you find meaningful use cases that's really going to natively integrate into your day-to-day workflow. So like I don't use code completions that much because my brain is loud, so I just talk to Copilot chat consistently, whereas I know some of my other colleagues like a big code completions users and their muscle memory still just goes to browser and Stack Overflow. That's totally fine as long as we're still being productive with Copilot. Yeah.
Question. Have you ever considered using the same prompts amongst 3 different companies and see if you come up with the same results in the same environment?
That's a really good call out, and sorry for the feedback. We'll call out if we kind of backtrack how GitHub Copilot is created. Under the hood, very much under the hood, we're running an Azure OpenAI model. We have a ton of kind of additional smarts and proxy layers and AI kind of vulnerability detection and stuff on top of that. None of that is kind of fail-proof. You still need security and quality gates. But where I'm getting to with that is that because we're running on OpenAI, a large language model under the hood, fundamentally our results are probabilistic, not deterministic. So we get the question from customers super often because they want to be able to send the exact same prompt and have all of their hundreds of developers across the world getting the same result. They want to be able to guarantee that Copilot will give them the exact result. And unfortunately, that is not how this works because it's all a probability game. So GitHub Copilot's LLM under the hood is trained across all of the public repositories that exist in the GitHub public domain. So that also means that the accuracy that you get with GitHub Copilot depends on how common it is in your public domain as well.
Also add on your question, you can hear me? Yes, I suppose.
For the Teams guys, yeah. I'll
Asking the same question is just part of the question. A question or you add some context is also drawing context from your IDE. So from other code that you may have open. So even if it was deterministic, you still have to have open the same windows with the same code at the same point to get the same answer. So just asking the same, I don't know, give me a function in Python to do something. It's also dependent on where you are asking and what environment do you have open underneath. So it's very unlikely that you will get the same answer.
That's what my question was. If you've got the same environment at the same time, the same prompt,
And still,
you actually still get the same answer.
oh, probabilistically, yes, but it's not guaranteed.
Because I am told that Copilot doesn't train your functions.
Absolutely.
And so everything is effectively, and so therefore, because it's all fresh, I would have thought that
It's not.
Cool. So that conversation about context was a wonderful segue. By a quick 101 for those of you who haven't seen Copilot, especially as we talk about the models conversation, this is super important. We have two different components of GitHub Copilot in our IDE. The first being code completion and the second being chat. So in Visual Studio Code, these are two separate extensions. In Visual Studio Full, if any of you are .NET houses, we've combined them into the same extension. So fundamentally, the contexts that we look at are different as well. So in code completion, I'm looking at everything in the current window above and below, as well as all of the other windows I have open. Izzy, you have your hand up. Yes, thank you. Is that loud? Is that big enough? Okay, cool. Cool. So if I say, for example, I haven't saved this, so it's probably not going to give me anything super intuitive. Generate a calculator BRD using this. Interesting. I haven't saved it. I also haven't specified this as a CS file. So I'm quite curious where it's getting its context from. But yeah, it's essentially generating some system packages here. So you can see it auto-completing for me. Now under the hood, this is still running 3.5 turbo. That is because as a developer, I kind of need this ghost text to be popping up nearly instantly. Otherwise, I'm just going to continue entering and go about with my natural code. Whereas if I think about that chat experience, I do have the ability to interact with it, follow the bouncing ball. I can give it harder problems, more context. So we're running GPT-4 under the hood here. Yeah, just so that I can give it more information and also noticing that I don't have the same user experience expectation where it's a near instant response. Let me save the current file I have open as a markdown. I'm just going to leave it as entitled. You shouldn't be leaving it as just entitled because it's also taking in the file name as context. But bear with me. These are stories. And I'm just following the bouncing ball here and following code completion's suggestions. And then also, I've also just gone to Control Enter, which generates for me GitHub Copilot suggestions, which will offer me up to 10 alternate suggestions to achieve the same outcome. So in this instance, it's only giving me the one suggestion. But as we think to an actual real coding use case, a lot of our customers ask us, hey, like, when am I actually going to spend the time looking at 10 suggestions? And do you think that's actually going to make me a faster developer? The answer that I usually give is, well, no, maybe it won't make you faster, but is this going to propose potentially other ways that you could have designed the same function to make it more modular, more reusable, more aligned with your enterprise standards, and allow you to just look at code in a different way? A bit clichély, a bit cheesy, fundamentally think that being a developer is a creative design role. Like, I really like just being able to whiteboard a problem with some of my colleagues and argue about the computational efficiency. So this is something that really lets me be deliberate about the way that I'm going about my code. Yeah.
I've never used Copilot in GitHub. Could you explain the screen to me, please?
What do you mean by Copilot in GitHub? Oh, this one here? So essentially, I'm
Like
in.
you were typing away and all of a sudden your code appeared, but didn't look normal. So.
Oh, this is Markdown. So this is natural language. So this actually isn't code. So let me bring up COBOL code. Let's see. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's what I had open. I apologize. It's going to give me 0 suggestions. That's because COBOL.
What screen you have there? Because I.
The ID, he wants to.
Yeah. So essentially, this is my IDE. So as a developer, this is where I'm opening up my code to make any code changes before I commit it back to then github.com, Azure DevOps, wherever my code resides.
Using VS Code?
Yes, here's Visual Studio Code. Yep. We also support Visual Studio 2022. We have the entire JetBrains and IntelliJ family supported. NeoVim is there at the moment too, though we don't have chat capability. And it is on roadmap that we are going to soon support xCloud for our iOS developers. Yes. Control Enter. So I always use the short key because I can never remember exactly where it is on the Copilot menu, but that is also something that I can ask the VS Code agent here. Oh, God. How do I open?
You're not use the search bar.
It depends. My search bar up the top will give me all of my kind of usual menu items. I'll be able to say, yeah, show and run commands, search for text. Here, I'm introducing the concept of different agents and applications embedded within my Copilot chat example. So we've preloaded my Visual Studio Code app and agent with a understanding of, yeah, how everything works in VS Code. So you can see here to open code completion suggestions in GitHub Copilot chat, you can use the command and it's going to hyperlink me to that showing command palette. So for a lot of the things, yeah, I can just use the search bar, but it's also giving me advice on, hey, how can I import the same profile that I may have loaded onto my virtual desktop and make sure that it's the same thing here. So you can go beyond just, looking for things. Yeah, I think you had your hand raised as well, or was that my imagination? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. You can select the text or you can focus the cursor. So if you focus the cursor, it will just be at that point in time, and it will still take the above and below as context for the specific ask. Apologies that my code completion suggestions is not generating great results at the moment. That's not a tooling thing. That's a me as a user kind of thing, because I'm not huge on code completions personally. I spend most of my time in Copilot chat. Which, if we move over to, is quite a bit more flexible with context. So in Copilot chat, we have all of our open files in my IDE as context, as well as all of my chat history. There are also ways of being able to include additional files or look across my entire workspace as context. So if I click at workspace here, that's going to bring in everything across my entire workspace in this Explorer experience. Yeah, I often use file to bring in other local files. For example, being able to compare two separate files that may both be a controller, but again, walking me through, hey, what are the differences between these two files? They're meant to be using the same architectural patterns, but obviously many different people have had a hand in developing them. So can you verify them, walk me through the different dependencies, etc. What I'll touch on is because GitHub Copilot Chat retains the chat history, I really like this concept about foundational prompts. So being able to set at the start of your chat experience, hey, I actually want you to be my accessibility coach. So every time I interact with you, I want you to give me input about how I could be conforming with WCAG 2.1, because this is not something that I have necessarily top of mind. I'm not an accessibility expert myself. Tell me how I could be doing better. Similarly, I see people using the idea of foundational prompts to tell GitHub Copilot, hey, be my prompt engineering coach. Tell me how I could have been more specific and recommend a better prompt for me. Following that same bouncing ball, tons of enterprises with very specific needs. So I've seen a few customers have like paragraph long prompts that they send to chat every time at the start of that chat experience to, again, give Copilot more direction on where they want the suggestions to head. Yeah. Unfortunately not. Yeah, unfortunately not. With Copilot Enterprise, we do have the ability to look at knowledge bases that's using, if you've heard of RAG, that's using RAG under the hood to be able to say, hey, everything about this specific topic, I want you to index it accordingly. That's still not saving a prompt library. It's more saving a library of content that would kind of address something like in that enterprise example where they want to copy paste all the standards to be able to say, hey, suggest things that align with this standard practice. Knowledge bases would help address that, but it's still not, prompt library copy paste. So I'm going to pop this into Copilot chat. Cool. And it's given me the verbal indication of, yes, I understand these instructions. Now what I'm going to do is we're going to start at the very start of how do I develop a product. So kind of following a bit more, calling it BDD is probably a bit ambitious, but I have a dictionary product requirements document here. I'm going to ask Copilot Chat, create user stories for me with technical requirements and raise potential security considerations. So I didn't need to include the dictionary PID as my file because it's currently open. So you can see here GitHub Copilot, when it finishes its message, has used that dictionary PID markdown file as a reference. And sure, let's create some user stories with technical requirements. So it's searching for words about a dictionary. It's telling me, hey, from a security consideration perspective, because you asked for that, validate and sanitize user input in case there are any SQL injection attempts. And it's gone through 4 different user stories. That is a lot of text for me. I'm going to ask it, can you simplify this into 2 paragraphs? So if it gives you a response that is not what matches your needs, just tell it to do better. Give it more direction on exactly what you want. So you can see it's given me that simplified version of the provided content in exactly 2 paragraphs. And this is something that maybe I can copy paste to a boards or an issue and have a super clear description of what I'm doing. I'm then going to ask Copilot. Actually, I was going to ask Copilot to create a README of what these product requirements are, but I think this is actually something that I'll show you using that at workspace. So I'm deviating from the dictionary PRD for a bit, so apologies for breaking the flow. So I'm going to use at workspace. You saw before that I'm using COBOL code here. So I'm going to say generate a README about this workspace, flag dependencies, integration points, add MIT licenses, anything you think should be in a README. So we think about Copilot as how do we help you spend more time coding and less time generating repetitive boilerplate work, also commenting and documentation. So even if it's even if one takeaway is you start using GitHub Copilot to generate README files and add comments by like selecting and then going Copilot generate docs, like I think that's still a massive time win. So you can see here I've generated that README file. It's walking through project structure. It's outlining key directories and outlining dependencies, integration points, and licenses, as well as getting started. So I asked it, hey, add anything you think a README file should include. I didn't direct this getting started part, but it's added it in anyway, including contributions are welcome and contact. So that's pretty cool. I'm going to go back to the dictionary app and I'm going to say, based on the dictionary app user stories, how would I create how could I create this app stack? Okay, so I've asked it based on this dictionary PRD and our conversation thus far with our user stories, what would this look like in Azure? I'm not familiar with Azure. Maybe I'm coming from another cloud. Maybe I've never been exposed to cloud. How do I use you as a learning tool? Can you walk me through some of the steps? That's not actually what my prompt was, but it's kind of how I'm thinking about this. So it's walking me through and saying, first, you need to set up the Azure resources. You'll have an app service, a SQL database. It's giving me the steps on how to set those up. It's telling me cognitive services, okay, to suggest things like word suggestion or language translation. That does make sense. And then deploy via CI/CD and Azure DevOps. Again, this is something that I can continue to fine tune. So for example, here I have a list of approved SKUs in Markdown for an example Contoso enterprise. So I'm going to say, can you generate architecture? Okay, so I've asked it, can you generate that again? Except this time, looking at this list of approved SKUs and only using stuff that I've outlisted that I have outlined here. And you can see here, a lot of it is quite similar because, well, frankly, the SKUs I have approved are quite fundamental Azure services. But you can see here, it's gone to the extent of specifying that app service premium v3 because that's what I have in the README. It's telling me to use a SQL database, application insights, which I do not have in the list. So there you go. I guess that's to the point of, as I ask it to look mainly at the approved SKUs list, that's not actually a gate. It's just another recommendation that I'm sending through as context. So GitHub Copilot can listen, and I'm hoping it will listen to help me learn, but it's not necessarily going to because it doesn't actually know Azure. It doesn't actually even know how to code. It's all probabilistic. But yeah, you can see here it's also given me a bit of an architecture diagram, a bit of data flow arrows, but application insights isn't connected to app server, so needs a bit of work, especially in the ASCII diagrams. What I am gonna quickly touch on, because I recognize I'm way over time, we have a combination of slash commands that it's us compiling what are some of the common prompts that we see users using a lot with GitHub Copilot. So being able to say search across the entire workspace, explain this COBOL code to me, because God knows I've never been a COBOL dev and we rarely have talent on market nowadays. Fix. So I am not getting connectivity out, or this button isn't showing, or it's not prodding for input. Can you tell me why? I really like new and new notebook. So this is the ability not just to use Copilot to generate a new file, but also to scaffold an entire folder structure for me and automatically populate the boilerplate code within that folder. So I'm going to say scaffold a new IAC. So I've asked it scaffold new infrastructure as code, preferably in ARM templates, to be able to deploy this architecture stack. You can see it's asking me to create a workspace. Before I actually create a new workspace and save it, I just want to validate what did the JSON files actually look like. Cool. So we have our storage template, some of the resources outlined. Looking at the VM template now, we have our different parameter files as well. There's nothing in the VM template JSON. Oh, sorry for the feedback. Cool. So we can see some of the network parameters automatically populated. It's given me a suggestion on VM size, and then I can run those scripts and deploy to. I know I'm way over time already. We talked about agents before. We have an announcement earlier this week around Copilot extensions coming to public beta. As we work with LLMs, public beta. So it is not generally available, which basically means it's a work in progress and subject to change at any point. So anything I demo for you today moving forward could potentially age very poorly. Essentially, with extensions, if we rewind, when we work with LLMs, we have this idea of a time capsule. We're stuck in a bit of a bubble. It is not economically viable to be training LLMs every single day. So usually they're only trained up to a certain interval. So that means if you've used Copilot Chat or even Code Completions before, for example, it likely won't have an awareness of .NET 8 or 9, or it won't know about Azure Container Apps or some of the newer services we've brought to market in the last few months, though Container Apps is a bit older than that. So what we're doing is working with a lot of our commonly used third-party vendors, such as Azure, but also Docker, Octopus. There is another project management and potentially GitHub platform competitor that's working on an extension that will be announced at their main marketing event mid-October that I encourage you to keep an eye out. I have to be vague just because this is hopping on YouTube. But yeah, a ton of different third-party vendors that are creating extensions to feed into Copilot that will allow you to tap into up-to-date current information about their platform, while also being able to understand more about your environment that sits on that platform. So as I look at my GitHub Copilot for Azure extension, I can start asking it questions because I've authenticated to my Azure subscription and tenancy about my different subscriptions, resource groups. I can get it to optimize AKS, for example. I can use AZD up to automatically deploy, or not automatically, I can use AZD up to at least deploy applications directly to Azure. So again, it's all in this thought process of keeping my flow in the IDE without having to go to the browser, to the Azure portal, to launch Darkly, Octopus directly.
Are the updates regional or global?
For the extensions, global.
Because you mentioned about, how the update of the LLMs to a certain point. So are they updated regionally or globally?
So they're all global, but it's a timing and interval thing. So we don't make the commitment to, for example, update it every 6 to 12 months. It's more of a, hey, based on the information that's hit market ever since X date, does it make sense for us to then refresh the model? So I can actually ask Copilot.
Oh, so you can actually ask when was the last time it was updated?
We'll see whether it replies. We're pushing. Okay, my knowledge was last updated in October 2023. So let me. What? Oh. Okay, I might have to disconnect for this bit. Don't want the entire login process on YouTube. OpenAI and all we also additionally superficially limit that. Yeah.
When we talk in the
Sorry, man.
So it's random taking material that it thinks will help when it draws suggestion from the model. When you go in chat, it's because it's using a different model. So the autocomplete is a 3.5 turbo, while the chat is using the 4.0 something. I mean, it's another version of the model. The context that is drawing in that case is looking at all the things that you have to the project where you are connected. However, without going in religious war between, oh, I have a monorepo, does it take the full monorepo? No, it doesn't. And it's still probabilistic, by the way. However, because it does have more context, and hopefully in the chat by natural language, you may ask, even if it is not open in the IDE, in this repo, have I already defined an API call for a specific reason? If yes, find it where, and I want to reuse it in this new piece of code. This is how you use it. But the limit is, it's almost double the context if you want, but how it works is exactly the same. Today, we had an opportunity, and maybe it's of some interest to tell you how this model works. So you have what I call three layer. The first layer is this game that you do between prompt and suggestion. And you have heard in the market now, even if you go in the job board, there are a lot of requests for prompt engineering, because basically you have to learn how to play with how you ask things to the AI so that you get the answer that you want. And you have to change a little bit the context, or you change the way where are you asking the thing. The second thing that you can do is RAG. If you ever heard, is retrieval augmented generation. So basically you are not retraining the model. The model is still the same model, but you are indexing, for example, a repo. So, and that knowledge of indexing a source of knowledge, when the suggestion come back from the model, are passed through this indexing so that most probably you will get something that is more near or more punctual to what you are trying to do. The third layer that you have, it's custom model. In custom model, you are training the model on your code base or on a specific repo. So when you ask for something, you can expect to receive it exactly or very similar to what you have trained the model. For now, custom model are very expensive from an infrastructure perspective, as you can imagine, and there are also a lot of regulation because any organization, because you are retraining the model on your own data, on your own code base. So what we see in the market, and is not Copilot, but also other offering that you see, and you know that Amazon is coming with Amazon Q, you have Google Gemini, every AI has the same structure on how they works. It's having the model, prompt engineering, chat is taking this interaction definitely to the next level, and reg models. Extension, for example, and the chat that you can do in github.com, where you can add the knowledge base, is doing exactly that. Sorry, a very long answer for a short, but does it make a little bit sense how we're doing it? Yes.
Excuse me, could you explain what a token is?
Yep.
So what it actually is the token?
In his raw form, it's a piece of text. Yes, it's a piece of text. So it's not, and we talk about token and not about a piece of code, because, for example, if you have a function and you have a function add the random number between a min and max, and then you have your implementation of the function, what is doing, when I say tokenization, is not taking a snippet of code and passing the snippet of code. Maybe it's taking the word function, the word add the random number, and another word over there. Maybe this is why it's probabilistic. And the good thing about that is that you cannot rewrite the code starting from the token, because it's a complete mess. It's how AI work, and because when you send your query to AI to get an answer or a suggestion, it's going through a neural network. So it's a game of I tell you and you try to guess. So it's when we talk about artificial intelligence, I mean, this is my personal opinion. First of all, we are in a community. To me, we shouldn't. It's not really intelligence. It's a very educated guess that he makes. It's not like, oh, I understand what you're saying. If you ask what time is it to the artificial intelligence, it doesn't understand that you are actually asking the time. But he knows that when you use that specific word in that specific order, most probably what you are searching for is the actual time. That is an educated guess, is not intelligence. Please. Correct, is indexing, and is indexing in the same way in which it does tokenization. So even when you use reg, it's basically you provide some context in the prompt. You ask, put the case. You are coding and you need a function, but that function in your organization is mandated that you have to implement it in a specific way, because there are different ways. So what you do, if you ask normally without reg, you ask to the model, oh, I need this function to do this thing. What it will do, it will provide you the best hit from what is in the model. And the model does not know anything about what your organization is requiring from you or what is your mandated. But if you index a repository of standards that you have to follow, when the content comes back from suggestion, it goes from reg and it will match what you need inside your organization. So and that is the second level. As I said, the third level, you just retrain your model on your code base, and you can expect to get what you are doing in your code base. Sorry, I don't want to make you an ADH at this time. So if you have other question,
So to expand on.
Thank you for explaining.
No worries.
So to expand on what Marco said, this is GitHub Copilot in the GitHub.com platform. Using that high testing. Okay. So here you can see that my organization admin has defined a few different knowledge bases, which essentially says, hey, across your organization, traverse all of the markdown files that fit this regular expression that I know about GitHub Advanced Security or GitHub Engineering. So as for example, we talk about standards, I can go to the GitHub Engineering document and just ask, how do I actually publish a product out to market? Or So I've asked it, how do I do push protection on GitHub Advanced Security for Azure DevOps? It should come up with a plan. This one will take a bit longer because, again, it has so much to traverse through. Oh, and you can also see specifically stored, as well as so I can click on any of these and be brought to the code. If we go back to the conversation or repositories, so you can see here that as I ask it to talk about GitHub Copilot, usually it will give me an indication of whether or not that repository has. You can see here, as I ask about NGINX, it is already indexed for improvement.
In the model, you can expect in the actual model that it does know Nginx because it's quite common, it's open source, so there are a lot of examples. However, when the model was trained, it doesn't know which is the latest PR that is open on the repository because it's not just maybe it's happened today or yesterday. This is exactly reg because it's indexing as of now. So if you ask a question like, what is the latest PR on that repo? Is able to tell you because it's doing it right now. So this is how it augments what is coming from the model. And the knowledge base is really good because if you have knowledge in your organization or you have knowledge that is not public knowledge, the model does not have that knowledge, but you can still provide that knowledge by indexing a specific knowledge base or a specific repo.
GitHub platform. Using that, you can so bring it back down to IDE using that GitHub. Okay, demigods are not. And then you can see it's selecting the different knowledge bases. So the same ones that I showed you just a moment earlier beforehand.
When you requested PR before, is that public?
Yes.
This one, yeah.
When we go outside the IDE, this kind of functionality are expecting the code to be in GitHub, and this Nginx is not even a GitHub. It's an open source project that is inside GitHub. Everyone can access it, so it doesn't matter which organization. So you can ask actual question on the status of the repo. How many issues are now open? How many PR? What is the latest commit that has been done? And it's something that you don't have. I mean, you have historical data in the model, but you don't have the actual situation of the repo that you can get here. So, and this is just to show you how you augment with the reg, because custom model is very expensive. Again, it's very heavy. So it depends on the use case. RAG in many cases is the way to go for many specific things that you can do in AI. So you will hear not only from Microsoft OpenAI, but also from AI in general, a lot talking about RAG, because RAG is the second step of having something very specific.
NGINX, the one we're asking about at the moment, is that you can do this for private repos that you have access to as well. Yeah. Yes.
Oh, yes, pull request. Oh, yes. I mean, we just got lost, and I'm sorry. Token, PRs, ID. Yes, I mean, like this is jargon. My wife hates me for this stuff. I mean, like, yes, you as a given. Oh yeah, PR. Yes, sorry.
I think Daniel gets that too.
I might quickly pop back into IDE before we completely open the floor to questions. So while Marco was being a gem and answering a bunch of questions about tokens, I was harassing Copilot, asking about the Azure extension. So you can see here I was asking what web apps do I have across my entire subscription. It's generated an Azure Resource Graph query for me. It's now told me some of the web apps that I have across the different subscriptions as well as where they're hosted. So I could have drilled down being like, hey, in Contoso Hotels, what web apps do I have in East US? But my prompt's pretty broad. I've then asked it what's the URL of this application, and it's given me back the Azure websites.net domain. I've now switched pace to use this as a learning tool. So what's the difference between Azure Container Apps, Kubernetes services, Service Mesh, and container instances? And it's given me a high level around what each of the different products are for, with a link to click to the Azure documentation. A bit of a tongue-in-cheek comment. I've asked it which is the lowest cost. The reality is it depends on your use case. And it's actually been decent at reflecting, look, here's typical lowest costs. Here's what may be more expensive due to managed services and scaling features and just needing to be enterprise grade. I do enjoy that it still gave an answer around service mesh and providing a bit more of that cost perspective. Then also addressing the idea of, hey, maybe I haven't been in Azure Dev for long. What's the equivalent of Lambda in Azure? And how do I secure an Azure function? So you very much can use it as a learning tool. It will populate suggestions on the next question for you to click on and prompt for you to click on as well. So yeah, that's
a question from around the Azure.
so. I'll note that the Copilot for Azure extension is still in private beta, so it's going public beta end of November. So this isn't most likely something that you guys can try out at home. For any of the extensions that you install, regardless of whether that is the Azure extension, Octopus extension, etc., you need authorization from at least the GitHub side. So at a GitHub organization or enterprise admin, they actually need to whitelist and approve each of these extensions individually, because we're establishing another point of data connection and data flow, right? I'm pretty sure on the Azure side that we do also need an Azure admin to approve the relationship, but I'd actually need to get back to you on that one. Yeah, I'm thinking the same. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
Correct.
Yes, absolutely, yes.
Yes.
We are recording. Yes.
So extensions are public beta. Yeah. So can change at any moment. Yes. Okay, let's rewind a bit. So if I have my code in GitHub, that means that I'm using GitHub Enterprise Cloud or Server. For Copilot, we have two different plans. The first is Copilot for Business. That very much is this IDE experience where it does not matter what code repository my source code is in. There are commercial arrangements that can be reached if your repositories are elsewhere. To use GitHub Copilot chat on github.com, to date, I'll heavily caveat the to date and okay, up until today, you've had to have that enterprise SKU and your code in GitHub to be able to use this github.com chat feature and be able to create knowledge bases and index your own private repositories, etc. Today, I've gotten the okay from Marco to speak to. Yep. Yeah. Yeah, for the record, I still need employment. Can't retire yet. So from today, we are bringing for Copilot for Business, even if you're not using GitHub for your code itself, we're letting you use this .com chat experience too. Obviously, because you don't have your code in GitHub, it can't really create knowledge bases and index on your own private code. But that still means that I can go to any of the public code on GitHub and learn about it, figure out dependencies, ask questions like I had been about Nginx. So that's already a super valuable tool. I'll also add that brings cool stuff like you can integrate Bing chat into, or like you can search Bing in the chat.com and enterprise SKU. So that allows me to, again, bring more information into context that's up to date, that utilizes the largest search platform. You wanted to add?
No.
Okay.
When you,
Yes.
Oh, but that is quite common. I mean, like,
Uh,
while you search, I can start.
Okay.
I mean, as I said, as we discussed before, in autocomplete is using the 3.5 turbo, while in chat inside the IDE is using 4. We just announced that OpenAI, that is the model on which we base, they release the O1 that we are testing. So the new models are coming quite often. A caveat that I will say is, and I also said this morning, is not that you have a bigger model, it will be better. It doesn't. Is not, there is not a direct relationship between how big is the model and the kind of results that you get. We O1net the first results that we are getting is that it can do complex reasoning. However, the performance are lower. So what we are waiting is when all these models are produced, like the 4, the 01, they come in a version that is called Mini, where they are focusing on a specific aspect that will be coding. So they are not retraining on everything, and that is much better for the specific use that you can do.
So to summarize Marco's magic, I guess being super intentional that each of the models, just because it's newer doesn't mean it's better. It's that we are really deliberate around the difference between minis and turbos and O1s, because each of the different models will have their own performance as well as how broad of a scope it can look at, as well as cost trade-offs. So all of the discussion around O1 recently has been very much initial testing. In my opinion, it will be quite a while before this is something that we can beta, like it's not even staff shipped within GitHub, but we see it being really beneficial, especially as we look at GitHub Next and some of our Copilot workspaces conversations. So GitHub Next is a website that shows you all of our research and design and development projects. So I hear this very often referred to as, think of the science projects. So we don't know whether anything listed here will actually come to market, but it gives you a good indication of where we're investigating Copilot to be able to help the wider market. So Workspaces is this really end-to-end ecosystem where we have our issue defined, and then it's automatically creating a spec and plan for me to be able to execute. It's automatically generating that code for me as well. Under the hood, if you're familiar with Codespaces, which is virtualized compute in pretty much an IDE in the browser, it's running Codespaces under the hood to be able to validate that that actually does run before presenting that back to you as an end user. So that's where we see O1 being really beneficial potentially, because that is a much larger, much more complex problem where we also don't have users expecting an instant response.
When you mentioned the license before Copilot, not the enterprise, but the business. Did you mean business and 365 or what do you mean?
Nope. Complete. No, our licensing names are fine. So Copilot for Business is completely separate to all of the other licensing constructs we have in the Microsoft ecosystem. So Copilot for Business is typically 19 USD per month per user, whereas our Copilot Enterprise is 39 USD per month per user, obviously with that 39 price point, not including the costs to actually be running your code on GitHub Enterprise. Did that answer your question, or did it leave you with more questions? Okay. The knowledge base feature, the one that I just showed on, let me try, I might have gotten out of it. Oh, here. So yes. So up until now, this has only been that highest SKU. From tomorrow, pending blog announcement. Marco said it, not me. Pending blog announcement, it will be available on that lower $19 SKU as well. But again, you won't be able to create knowledge bases on your own code because it's not in GitHub, so we can't see it. We don't have it stored. You'll just be able to tap into the knowledge bases on. Yeah.
So,
Actually, yeah.
Follow-up question to, if an organization already has GitHub Enterprise or a team plan, and so they do have their repositories in GitHub, will they be able to build, they still won't be able, they still would need Enterprise SKU to build the knowledge bases out of their own code,
Yes.
even though the code already is in GitHub?
Yes, it has to be a deliberate step up in licenses from the GitHub admins.
Yeah.
Even because if we are in GitHub free or GitHub team, we cannot access. To have Copilot, you need the GitHub Enterprise.
Yeah.
So it's a step up.
Yeah.
Anything else? Curiosity? Yes. Anything at all? Please go.
So you mentioned that there is there, so you have to go to levels and
Whoa, I mean, this is not GitHub. This is a discussion about AI in general. I mean, even now, custom model are in private beta, but from a technology perspective is even before public beta. And I am part of some of this beta. And sometimes it also, we are really early stage. It's very difficult to train the model on a specific code base. Multiple code base is next level. It will come, but I have completely no idea. Completely no idea. Yes, it's. It's. Do you want? Do you have?
I guess the question is, would you be willing to pay for it?
Oh, and yes, because I mean, just consider that with one code base, if you are an organization and you want to train on your own code base, there are security requirements because you are training a model on your own data. So maybe you want it in your infrastructure, and running a model, it's quite expensive. So running multiple code base, I mean, that is, I don't know. I mean, now I will go to sleep with this in my mind. Like, yeah, the answer is 42. Yes, but
Because there's obviously got to be a plateau.
Oh my
that suddenly, let's just get the whole. It's like Power BI and Premium and Fabric. You know, you get to a certain so many users, you might as well just go all around.
And it's also linked to what I was telling you before about the model, the bigger model. I mean, even if you go bigger, you are not getting benefits, and then the performance degrade. And we are talking about code assistance, so you need something that is real time, because while you are coding, you cannot sit and wait for an answer to come. So there is so many trade-off. And honestly, if we go deep in AI, AI, and sorry for all the jargon that we have used tonight, but I mean, managing this stuff is huge. So it's not like bigger or multiple code base will be a fit for your use case. It may be, but I doubt, because there are also scale. If it is too big, it becomes almost irrelevant, and it will not provide you with any benefit.
Completely out of scope. So
Oh, yeah.
yeah, the question was, and forgive me if I replay this back incorrectly, essentially our ability to create images, right, and edit images. This is completely text-based. So if you saw before in Copilot chat, even when it attempted to create an Azure architecture diagram, that was all ASCII and it was also wrong. So there's, yeah, like it's just firmly out of scope as a tool for devs that. Oh, yeah. Wait, did you want to interject?
I mean,
DSR, you also had your hand up. Oh, okay.
do you have a VS Code?
Yeah, VS Code.
So when it goes back to what we are discussing, you need a customized model, you need the optimized model for what you are trying to achieve. So if you ask any kind of question like best chocolate cake, and the model is the same that is coming from OpenAI, if you ask this kind of question, whoa. No, yeah, he was going to give me the recipe of a chocolate cake. Of course, he's not answering, but he can build program, and with prompt engineering, you can go around this kind of limitation. So if I ask build a HTML page displaying the 10 best type of cakes, oh, that is next level. We can go. So you see, now I'm curious. Here your 10 cakes. So, but you need a specific model to do that stuff. So no, graph, it's a complete different way in which you train your model to take images, and they keep it separated even the other vendors.
I'm going to apologize because I know there are other questions. Someone said the PA word, being Power Apps. Yeah.
Sorry.
So because this is just dealing with files that we can consume in a text format in some way, that does mean that a lot of our UI-driven automation testing suites, application builders like Power Apps, some of these tool sets, such as Power Apps, have the ability to export it to code, which then will allow you to open it in Visual Studio Code and ask questions about it. I personally still wrangle with whether that is realistic, because it is completely taking Power App builders away from the make.powerapps.com, I think is the URL, the usual builder that they are used to. So there are copilots embedded in the BizApps ecosystem that feel like a better fit for that. But it depends on the why.
What was the question?
Question online. Could you elaborate or expand on the difference between Copilot, GitHub Native, Copilot Business versus Enterprise and Copilot for Teams? Because
there is no Copilot for Teams. So there are at the moment out as available offering. There are two offerings. One is Copilot for Business that it comes into flavor, so it's two. It's Copilot Personal and Copilot for Business, but we are talking about the same functionality. So you get the autocomplete in the IDE, you get the chat in the IDE, you get the CLI, Copilot CLI, and you get from tomorrow on me, the chat on GitHub. Copilot Enterprise is a separate offering, is more expensive. The main difference between the two, apart the price, is the second is assuming that you have your code in GitHub. So while GitHub Copilot for Business does not care where you are hosting your code, once you have your extension in your IDE, you can connect to your local machine, to Bitbucket, to GitLab, to any source code, and you can use it. For the other functionality like workspace that Amanda was telling you that is in preview beta, custom models and all the other stuff, you need to have your code inside GitHub because he's helping other phases of the software development lifecycle. So again, too many words, I'm really Italian. So two offering, Copilot for Business, Copilot for Enterprise. There is no Copilot for Team. There is no. And I know that Copilot is confusing because Microsoft is using Copilot as a brand for the AI products. So you have Copilot for 365, Copilot for Bing, Copilot for chat, Copilot for your wife, Copilot for... So it's becoming crazy. It's becoming crazy. But GitHub Copilot is a GitHub specific offering for coding assistant.
The first Copilot.
And he was, oh yes, we are proud, aren't we? It was the first commercial offer around Copilot. Any other question online? Maybe I just give a quick answer to your question, but I didn't. Can you build a full program? So yes, if you give the details of what you want to do, build me an API call that is getting data from somewhere and then is doing some transformation and then is sending the data somewhere else or storing the data, it will give you the scaffolding. If it is a complex application where you have input, output, and you are leveraging on variables and several files, you have to iterate because there is the limit of the context that we were discussing before, so it cannot have the consistency of a full application. Like even when you use at workspace, you cannot tell, oh, this is a Java application. At workspace, read my application and translate it in React. Yeah, good luck. It will do most part of the scaffolding, but you are in charge. And yes. Does it make sense? Yeah. Please.
What do you think, or what do you know, what are your feelings of, in say 1 year's time, what's going to happen to Copilot?
I'm going to retire. No. What is going to be of Copilot? I can tell you. I mean,
I know you can't tell us all the secrets.
No. There are no secrets because look, the market. I mean, if I tell you how many times I mentioned AI in the last year and a half, I mean, like even my kids, AI, and not because they have pain, but so I spent 1 year and a half on this interaction, on the initial interaction of AI, because we went through security questionnaire. So the technology, the code assistant is not commoditizing, but if you see the technology adoption curve, that has already crossed the chasm. So everyone is adopting, and the code assistant, just code assistant, you have other, Copilot was the first one, for us was the best one, let me just this, even if it is a community event, but there is the same code assistant is coming from cloud provider. Code assistant now is very common and very widely used. What I see that is coming, it's more help in other phases of the software development lifecycle. So AI writing for you things on which you are lazy, like building pull requests that are meaningful, or explaining your code, building tests, and doing all these other scaffolding around the software development. On the model, I'm not expecting what many people, when we were asking about the O1 model, in the next year, I don't have expectation that you will see a new model that suddenly you ask this model and you get, the 42 kind of answer. Is more around how we are using AI. So you will see more and more AI coming and helping you in the other part of the software development. Because even developers, coding is just like 15% of the time, because most part of the time you are deploying. And as I was saying today, all people away, it's been 20 years that the people, especially developers, and many of you can relate. Oh, we are shifting left security. We are shifting left infrastructure as a code. We are shifting left policy as a code. So now the developers has to look after 55 things. So if we can get some help from AI is where I see AI going. How do I feel? Good. I hope the Microsoft stock goes up. And I mean, if it goes up enough, I can retire. Yes. So Amanda, you want...
Must be nice.
Actually, it's like at the moment, it's actually the text though is voice enabled depending on what you're using, correct?
Yes, we have Copilot. Sorry, I'm laughing. It's not because of your question, because I'm Italian. Can you imagine with my accent asking Copilot to do coding on what he understands what I'm saying? I mean, like, he's racist. I mean, he's going to tell you, oh, I mean, if you don't speak the lingo, go back to your country. I mean, it's if you speak English, he will understand. There is Copilot. But I mean, we have a project, the same project that is called Copilot Voice. So we Copilot.
Troublemakers in the back. Apologies.
Oh no, this stuff is recorded. So Copilot, no, there is Copilot Voice, and Copilot Voice does exactly. You don't need even you can express what you want, and he will do it. In my case, is how much Copilot Voice understand what I'm saying, because I mean, like that could be the problem. So I'm still heavy on keyboards, but it's coming.
I'm actually thinking now also futuristic, where you've got your whatever screens you can drag stuff across. Eventually that will happen, but I just wondering though if you're actually aware of any such items, because at the end of the day, I mean, I use a touch screen. I don't know about you guys, but my touch screen's a nice big one, and I use it all the time. But the fact of in everyday life, a lot of people, you know, you have a tablet or you have a service touch or whatever it is. That's cool. But I think
I mean, technology you cannot really guess, because I mean, I'm quite experience. So I've been around for quite a while. I remember there were these trends that were coming, like virtual reality. So everyone was saying there were a lot of movies that were coming about virtual reality, and then virtual reality it sucks. I mean, it doesn't exist. I mean, even when you have Oculus, the video game, it's crap. When it came movies in 3D. You remember there was another trend. Oh, movies are going to be 3D. Yeah, with the glasses, the burn, you go. Yeah, you go out of the and a car is putting you down, because I mean you cannot see anything. So technology depends. What I can tell you is that in the actual interaction is working, and I find it helpful, even because I'm very familiar with Python, Perl, with certain languages. So I find a lot of benefit when I have to go on modern framework. What kind of interaction you are going to have? I mean, like I'm hopeful, but there is no guarantee, because even adoption of technology is so difficult. I mean, like I was waiting a medicine to lose weight for a long time. Now it looks that there is this Ozempic that I'm looking forward to use, but you can never tell. You can never tell. Anything else?
I'll pass it to me on that glowing review of Ozempic, apparently. Look, I hear it described very often as being like an iPhone moment. Like, we had no idea when the iPhone first launched how massive it would be and how quickly innovation would come out of it. So yeah, absolutely no idea. Looking into a crystal ball here, I think it's going to be super interesting seeing what it does to the developer market. Just because, yes, this means we can enable our junior devs super quickly, get them writing insanely good code really quickly. But how do we actually get them to that senior level where they can look at AI generated code and be able to tell whether it's any good or not? So there's a lot that needs to be done in terms of its impact just on human behavior. And that's an AI all round conversation, right? Not just about GitHub Copilot. Yeah, Izzy. Do you want to go first? And then I
Because
can.
I'm Italian.
Because you're Italian, Marco.
Yeah, I can go first. Definitely yes, and telling you how I mean it changed your life, this kind of technology. For example, I mean I give an example because I'm Italian. I can speak English barely, but basically when I was writing email or when I was writing essay, I was doing it with my mindset. So the way of composing a phrase or composing a statement was different from what. So having this kind of tool that you can pass your language to, or they can read to you, they can teach you how to do stuff, it's really life-changing for any kind of different ability that you have in terms also in speaking or in understanding, or if you have a problem with numbers or problem with language. I mean, it's really impactful in a positive way.
Sorry, I was just going to add as well, there are so many different facets around what accessibility looks like in different audiences that we need to consider. So like Izzy and I were in Wellington the other day and we presented and showed a video on a developer with cerebral palsy. So partially using that voice chat experience in Copilot chat, like he was just talking about how now he actually feels like he's been able to overcome and embrace the disability and be a full-time developer simultaneously. Oh yeah.
The meeting, you can take notes on the meeting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah. Simultaneously, like we had the GitHub event earlier today, and there were a few people who came up to me in the lunchroom just being like, hey, as a woman, like I feel really awkward asking the dumb questions to the senior developers in my team, often who are men. Whereas now I know it's a safe space where I can ask them those questions, but now at least I have Copilot chat to validate, is this a dumb question or isn't it? Is this something that's easily accessible before I go and ask some of those questions to my mentors? So I think we're only at the tip of the iceberg around figuring out how it helps people from diverse audiences. And I'm getting the wrap up sign.
It was often said ChatGPT 3.5, and when it exploded to the rest of the world, oh, it's really for older white guys who are English, blah, blah, blah. And so hence why the mentality initially was like, but from my perspective, I mean, yes, I have to be one of those people, but the fact that, you know, you have different cultures and the way you ask a question in Italian guaranteed is different from maybe English or Hispanic or, you know, Asian or whatever.
Yeah.
And so therefore, the fact that could be done in the settings within Copilot wasn't ethical.
Yeah, like I can ask Copilot chat a question in Italian or Japanese or Chinese. Sometimes it still does spit out the result to me in English. Sometimes it returns it in that native language. But it's another instance of where I don't feel like I need to force myself to speak English just to thrive professionally. Like I'm in my IDA, I can ask in any language I want. Cool. I might pass over to Jerome and to wrap us up. Thank you so much.